Good morning, everyone. This is Steve Crosby. Welcome to this edition of Monday Morning Musing, where we are going to try to wrap up the tidbits we've been giving you about the Bar Kokhba Revolt. So, I left you with the Bar Kokhba Revolt starting at about 1:32. It was a guerrilla-type action. It was popular, as all wars are in the beginning, but Hadrian, who was the emperor at the time, ain't having it. So he calls Septimius Severus, who is the governor of Britannia. He himself would become emperor later. And Severus sends something between 60 to 120,000 legionnaires into Judea to deal with Simon Bar Kokhba. The Jews can't handle it. They simply can't compete. You know, this messianic hope, God is on our side. It's going to be David against Goliath. You know, miracles are going to happen. It's not going well. Bar Kokhba retreats to a town called Betar, B-E-T-A-R. The populace, you know, the same people that make you a hero are the same people that bring you down when you disappoint them. Boy, that's a political premise that happens all the time. Yeah, we're voting for this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Even in democracies, this guy doesn't do what we want. He's out. We're just a little more sophisticated in a representative republic, but it's the same. It's the same principle. Give us what we want. Kill the people we want killed. Destroy the reputation of the people we want to destroy. Deliver what you promised, or you're out. Well, the populace has had it with this arrogant would-be prince of Israel, Simon Bar Kokhba, and so he loses the popular support. And because he's losing the popular support, another personality attribute they had, he was already somewhat paranoid about betrayal and treachery, and losing popular support doesn't help paranoid people. Hello, Richard Nixon in the 1970s. Brilliant guy, paranoid, loses popular support, bye-bye. So, allegedly, a Samaritan starts some rumors about him, rats him out to the Romans, and the Romans take the city, kill Simon Bar Kokhba, and that was the end of the revolt at about 135. But they are so exhausted with this people, this fractious, contentious, murdering people, that when they're not fighting us, they're fighting themselves. They didn't just kill Simon Bar Kokhba. They didn't just destroy the town of Betar. Rome emptied out the entire land of Judea. Every village. You think the destruction of 70 AD was bad? Every village, every town burned to the ground. Historians estimate approximately 580,000 people, Jews, were wiped out at one shot. The biggest travesty upon the Jewish people until the Holocaust, because this is basically the end of them as a state, as a functioning state, as a functioning entity, about 135 AD. Tie it in again, guys, right? Now, we're probably into the second generation of the church, but it's still in its infancy it's still trying to establish itself. There's probably been a Jew-Gentile separation in 70 AD, probably so. But 580,000 people have been wiped out by the dominating power of the government that you're under. What does that do to you? How do you live under that? That your government could just come in and wipe out the entire village. And now you're bringing this subversive message. Christianity was considered, the real message of the gospel was a subversive message. I've done a whole series on that, on the Eucharist, how the Eucharist was a subversive meal with a subversive message. If you haven't seen it, it's in the library here on YouTube. I recommend it to you. So, when the Apostle Paul early, obviously he's dead, mid-first century, but when the apostles speak of themselves as living sacrifices or facing death daily and those sort of things, yeah, they were carrying a message that for the world of their time was a viral infection. It needed to be stamped out. And then the message, the real gospel message, was so contrary to their experience. So it was contrary to their experience, but also a message of hope and relief. So, 580,000 people wiped out. Bar Kokhba is dead. The few Jews who managed to survive left Judea. They went to Galilee, and generally Tiberias and Sepphoris. And that's where the Talmud was written. And that's where basically the Jewish tradition went forward out of that area. Now, a few Jews went to Rome, and some went to Alexandria. There was already a thriving Jewish community in Alexandria, but they didn't speak Hebrew. They were Greek speaking. That's a long story, an interesting story, but too much for today. But at the end of the Bar Kokhba Revolt, Rome could care less about these remnants of Judaism here and there. The disdain, which was centuries old, had come to the point that they didn't even want Jews as slaves. They're not worth the trouble. So even the few that somehow managed to avoid getting wiped out in the Bar Kokhba Revolt, who managed to find their way to Rome or Alexandria or wherever, they just were no longer an entity of which Rome gave any attention. But one thing Rome was committed to, and this is what happened: no more trouble is going to come from this province of Judea, and no more did. The Bar Kokhba Revolt was the last organized Jewish revolt against the Roman Empire, and it was the culmination of literally a century and a half of bloodshed, violence, and various forms of revolt against one another. And that is the climate in which our gospel of good news managed to take root, and not only take root, but to expand and prosper. And put yourself in the shoes of somebody in 132, 135, 140 AD. And this message of forgiveness and love and hope and forgiving your enemy and loving one another, it would have been, for those that could receive it, like water from another realm, springs of water whatever this kingdom of this Jesus is, touch the deepest hopes of a humanity whose grandparents, parents, and themselves had known nothing but non-stop bloodshed and war. That is the socio-cultural context where the gospel took root. No, it wasn't ideal. And I could make the case even stronger. That is when things get easy for the church, is when the church declines. The church does its best when it is not in a position of dominant political authority. The church does its best at times under persecution. And persecution can range from overt martyrdom type persecution to the most subtle intellectual and philosophical rejection and persecution. And so in the day in which we live, all these forms of Christian dominionism, Christian nationalism, and God forbid, Christian eschatology that's rooted in bloodshed and violence. You know, our God is going to come back and kill all these people. That message is foul. That message is a betrayal of the gospel. That message is the same type of message that was functioning in 4 BC in Herod and in 65, 66, 67, 70, 115, 135. It's that same idealistic, messianic, false message that we are going to bring about the goodness of God by destroying our enemies, be it destroying in print, destroying their reputation, destroying their income, slandering their name. We're doing God's work against those horrible fill in the blanks. So there you have it, folks. That's the end of this series. I'll see you the next time. Hope you enjoyed at least the factual content of it and grasped just a little bit of what their world was really like. See you next time.